Sailor Moon Crystal D-Dice Challenge. This is a game by Japanime Games. I saw it at Gen Con 2019 and I knew I had to have it because my daughter Amelia, she's a big fan of Sailor Moon, especially of the manga, and actually she taught herself to read from right to left so she could read the comic book. So I knew if there is a game with that theme, she would be crazy about it. So I played this game with her, and well, she was happy because yes, there is Sailor Moon on the cards and in the theme, and she was very knowledgeable and happy. Oh, this character, actually she's the version of that character, but she comes from the future. Oh, I hope that wasn't a spoiler, friends. So, she was very happy with the theme, but actually I had the impression that she wasn't all that excited about gameplay, and I'm afraid I also was not super impressed. If nothing else, because it turns out the Sailor Moon Crystal Dice Challenge is a rethemed version of Japanime. Japanime is a game that by Cheap Ass Games, and it's sold in these sets here. And you can mix and match any component. Each button is a game component. These sets that are sets of 2 plus the rules, and you need to add the dice. But that's the game. Also, it's one of the few games that you can actually wear, again, because these are actual buttons. And so you had these that cost about $3 each, at least that's what I paid. And it turns out, again, that this is pretty much Japanime with Sailor Moon. Japanime, basically all that you need to know was the name of your character and the dice that the character will use. There are also some swing dice that you can change every time. Say this character will use a 4-sided, 6-sided, 8-sided, and any other dice, 2 variable each time. And you will see that that's how it works here. This is a pretty big box, however, right, for pretty much this game. Well, there's also some extra stuff. We have the rule book, and that's okay. Then we have, just as a little gadget that comes with the game, 2 lanyards, like so. You can go to Sailor Moon conferences and wear some cards that also come with the game that are not for playing, but you put them in there to show your allegiance in case you want to challenge other people to play this game. Just a little bit of like, I don't know, do I need these in a game? Probably not. Of course, my daughter Amelia was wearing them all the time we were playing, so there is, I guess, an audience. There is somebody who can appreciate that. Then you have a bunch of political dice in all colors, and then we have the actual main elements of the game, the cards. Oh, you may have seen briefly, tokens, victory tokens. Each time that you win a round, you get one, and then we have other tokens that represent special powers that the characters in the game have, and you can use them to mark those powers, to mark when you use them, etc., etc. So what happens? Each player will choose a character. Say we have the titular character, Sailor Moon, fighting against Queen Beryl. And we also take, if need be, we also take the markers, the tokens that indicate their powers, and then they take the starting dice, which are the ones marked in red, and the reserved dice. And I think you guessed the starting dice you have at the beginning. The color doesn't really matter. Those are the dice that you have at the beginning. The other dice you bring in as the game progresses. And so these are the pool for these 2, the starting pools. What happens? The game is played in rounds. Each round, at the beginning of each round, both players will roll their actual dice, their present dice. At the beginning of the game, that's only your starting dice. And then they will alternate, taking turns. The player with the single lowest result will go first, and they will alternate taking turns. And during your turn, you must try, if possible, to capture a die of the opponent. You capture a die if you have a die that is equal to or higher than that of an opponent, or if you can put together several dice, and by adding them, you match exactly the value of a die of an opponent. For example, with an 8, that's higher than a 4, higher than a 4, and a 4. I could capture any of those that I wanted. Otherwise, oh, look at this. Here I had rolled a 14 because that's totally what happened. And so I could use a 6 and an 8 to capture the 14. Suppose that that's the case. So the capture die is captured by the active player. The die or dice that have been used for the capture are re-rolled. And then the game goes to the other player. Well, this 4, I declare that this 4 is used to capture that 4. And then I re-roll it, and then it's back to that player that has 1, 2, 3, 4. What a stroke of good luck. Again, the game is the superpowers, the special powers, say Sailor Moon can take an extra turn, that sort of stuff, will allow you to do some extra stuff, 4 and 4. Boom. But this is a general idea, and one thing actually I really like in Batonman, the fact that so many characters have swing dice, that is that you could choose from turn to turn, but that does not appear to be the case. The game continues until one player doesn't have any dice left, in which case the round is over and you score points, which are based on pretty much the number of sides on the dice that you captured and the number of sides on the dice that you were able to preserve. Also, at the end of each round, the winner of the round will take a victory token, while the loser of the round will be allowed to take a die from the reserve and add it to their dice. And suppose the Sailor Moon lost this one, and Sailor Moon wants to add a 20 to her reserve. Then we rebuild our pools to the starting dice plus possible reserve, and we continue like this until a player has accumulated enough victory tokens to win the game. Sailor Moon Crystal Dice Challenge. I wanted to like this game so much. I wanted to like it because I thought my daughter Amelia would like it so much, and then we have a game that we are totally excited about. I think with this theme there's so much that could be done, and I believe, well, the theme is at least partially untapped. I wish that there was a cooperative game in which all the players control the various pretty guardians and they're fighting against some monsters. I even would like a game of that kind with Glitter Force, which is sort of like not a reboot, but clearly inspired by Sailor Moon. I think the theme would work perfectly that way. A game where you can have the the pretty guardians, the sailors just fighting against each other. That's less interesting to me. Of course, as I opened the box and I started engaging with the content, I started feeling some pangs of disappointment that haven't really left me, and they haven't been mitigated by what I saw. Discovering that this is basically Batonman, the overproduced edition certainly was not very exciting, because Batonman is not a bad game, and Sailor Moon Crystal is not a bad game if you are spending $3 for it. But if you are engaging in what appears to be this big production, you wrap the game for your son or for your daughter, it's huge, big excitement, and ultimately it is about rolling dice and capturing an 8 with an 8, or a 5 and a 3 with an 8, with virtually no real engagement with the theme, then it just feels disappointing. It is an overproduced version of Batonman. Again, not a bad game, but do we need this box? Also, the other gadgets that you have in here that have nothing to do with gameplay, of course, they're suspicious. Of course, they make us think of a production that just put some extra stuff in there to justify a bigger box. These days, most of the games, we buy them online, so games are not even fighting for visibility on a crowded game shelf, on a brick and mortar game store. So really, smaller games that are just the size that they need to be, and because of that they cost less to produce and they cost less to the buyer. I think they're preferable, especially these days. So I played it last week a couple of times with Dr. Amelia. I was not impressed. I thought she also looked disappointed. She liked it, but she looked disappointed in the fact that I also believed that she would have loved it. And after we played a couple of times yesterday, she asked me if we still have it. Maybe because she saw that I wasn't all that taken by the game, she was worried that maybe I sold it, maybe I traded it away, maybe I gave it to somebody. No, I confirmed that we still have it. I showed it to her on the shelf, and she seemed happy. She didn't ask to play it, though. As a completoist, as a Sailor Moon fan, I guess she just wanted to make sure that we have it. So young and already a young, serious collector. She just wants to have stuff for the sake of having it. I'm so proud, so proud. But of course, it is even better if she wants to collect games that it's fun to have for some reason, because we collectors are just weird that way. But then also, lo and behold, you can play them. This is a game that I don't think will be played very much. From time to time, I think my daughter will look at the shelf, be happy to see it there, and that will be it. So this is a game that really, in good conscience, I can only recommend to big Sailor Moon fans, to completoists that really want to have everything related to their favorite theme. But as for gameplay, that is not really a game that you need, because the things that the game does are easily done by smaller games that you can buy for a couple of bucks, or you can just make, because once you see the picture online of Button Man, then with a piece of paper and a pen you can just write down the stats of the pool of dice you're supposed to have, and that's pretty much it. The different elements that have been added here to the design to make the game different are just not enough to really make it different. Sailor Moon Crystal, a disappointment, at least for me and my daughter. Maybe a game that is good to have, that is better to have than to play.